Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. And today, I think it is time for another 1/18 scale review. And what we're going to be taking a look at today is the Ferrari 458 Spider by Hot Wheels. Fear of missing out. That was what drove me to purchase this car back in November 2020. Back then, CK model cars were selling these for roughly €35, and I picked it up even though I already had a 1/24 scale Ferrari 458 Italia by Bburago, and I also had a 1/18 scale Ferrari 458 Speciale by Bburago. So why purchase another 458, right? Well, this is the Spider, and I figured if I can get it for cheap, why not? Now, of course, this is the baseline Hot Wheels version. This is not the Elite version, but one thing that I immediately liked about it was the fact that it comes with a brown interior, while most of the Elite 458 Spiders that I could find had black interiors. So one downside of this baseline Hot Wheels 458 Spider is that only the doors open. The front trunk and the engine bay lid do not open, but I've got some interesting things to say about this model, as I will tell you over the course of this review. To freshen our memory a little bit, the 458 hardtop, which is known as the Italia, originally came out in 2010, but the Spider was introduced 1 year later in 2011, and the cars were manufactured till 2015. This, of course, being the predecessor to the 488. So as we take a look at the iconic front end of the Ferrari 458, you can see that Hot Wheels did a really good job, even on this baseline model, in replicating the headlights. These headlights are done really well. I cannot see any difference, in fact, to the Hot Wheels Elite version. And if you take a closer look here, you can see that next to these lenses, we have 6 rows of DRLs. And one difference that you can tell between this baseline Hot Wheels and the Bburago 458 Speciale is that they give you these tiny, tiny bumps that are supposed to represent LEDs on each of these 6 rows, while they're not there on the Bburago. In the middle, of course, we have the Ferrari logo. And moving further down, we come to the iconic 458 front grille. Now, one of the reasons why I purchased this 1/18 458 Spider is because I wanted to have this grille in 1/18 scale. On the Bburago 458 Speciale, you get a completely different grille. It's not this one. So this is something that you will only get on the Hot Wheels versions, in 1/18 scale at least. And that includes these fins. They already looked great on my Bburago 124, but in 1/18 they are even more real and tangible. Just from a design philosophy, I think they are far more beautiful than the much simpler, flat front air intakes of this car's competitor, the Lamborghini Gallardo. And if you look closely, you can see that there is also a grille back there. Although on this regular Hot Wheels, it's just got the grille pattern. But on the Elite, here is where you would find perforated metal mesh. Between the two fins, we of course have the raised silver prancing horse, which looks really cool, although it could be a little straighter on my model. Now, the front trunk doesn't open on this baseline Hot Wheels. Well, if you unscrew the bottom of this car, you'll find out it actually does. Because it has hinges. But the hood is bolted to the chassis of the model from underneath by 2 screws. If you remove those 2 screws, the hood will lift, but there won't be a way of stopping the lift because there is no front trunk piece to catch the hinges, just a big giant hole. So it will keep lifting and then slam into the windshield, scratching it in the process. Also, it becomes very loose if you remove the screws holding it in place, so I wouldn't do it if I were you. Now, I am wondering if you could salvage a front trunk piece from a Bburago 458 Speciale and put it in here, but it probably won't fit as the gaps for the hinges have to align perfectly with the hinges of the Hot Wheels for it to fit, and so some additional work might be needed. And here's a look at the side of the Ferrari 458 Spider. Something worth mentioning is that this baseline Hot Wheels has the exact same rims, lug nuts, silver calipers with the Ferrari branding, and a separate piece for the indicator as on the Hot Wheels Elite version. And of course we have the Scuderia shield up here, although it looks a bit blurry for some reason. And then we have the mirrors, which are metal, unlike Bburago's plastic mirrors, and they also have a nice reflective panel, as you can see right here. But that's where the differences end. You can see here that there is an indentation to indicate the door lock. On the Hot Wheels Elite, you would find a tiny separate piece here in brushed aluminum with an even smaller keyhole. So that piece is missing on the base version. Hot Wheels also made sure to include the Pininfarina logo even on this baseline version, and it looks good, but it is just a print. While on the Elite, this would be a separate photo-etched piece. If you look at this picture of the Hot Wheels Elite 458 Spider, you can see that the brake discs are different, especially in that their fitting, or whatever you call that part around the inner axis, is painted in silver. Now that detail also exists on this baseline Hot Wheels, but it is unpainted and therefore hard to see. And the perforated brake discs move through the calipers as they should. And here's the iconic rear view of the Ferrari 458 Spider. So, one thing that disappoints me here is that the rear grille beneath each taillight is just matte black paint. I mean, if you've watched my review of the 1/24 scale 458 Italia by Bburago, I showed you in that review that the new version Bburago released actually has a mesh pattern. But here on the bigger 1/18 scale, by a company that supposedly enjoys a higher reputation among collectors, you don't get that. What's also disappointing is that on the Hot Wheels Elite 458 Spider, these rear grills remain closed, but at least they get a closed mesh pattern. So that leaves you wondering, doesn't it? You buy a Hot Wheels Elite 458, the front grille, which is really hard to see, is fantastically perforated, but for some reason they did not perforate the rear grille, which is a lot easier to see. Anyway, now that we've got the negative out of the way, let's focus on the positives. So, despite just being a regular Hot Wheels, the third brake light here is the same separate piece as on the Hot Wheels Elite version, which is awesome. On 1/18 Bburago Ferraris, for example, third brake lights are just painted on, and so that's one of the reasons why some people, despite the artificially implemented limitations when it comes to opening parts, still decide to go for the Hot Wheels brand. Same applies to the taillights. They're the exact same ones as on the Hot Wheels Elite model. Superb quality, no pegs, and with a beautiful geometric pattern on the inside, like the real 458 taillights have, is replicated here on this diecast model. You do not get this on the Bburago 458 Speciale. Strangely, you also do not get this kind of detail on the baseline Hot Wheels 458 Challenge, or even on the baseline Hot Wheels 458 Italia hardtop coupe. They use different taillights, simpler ones for those models, but the baseline 458 Spider has the Elite ones, so small details like these are always worth pointing out. Further detail the Elite provides over this baseline Hot Wheels is that the area surrounding the 3 exhaust pipes is made out of a black closed mesh on the Elite, but here is just a red car body. Now I did color in the center of the exhaust so that it looks like they actually lead somewhere. So that is something you'd have to do yourself if you purchase this car. And what I also like about this entire rear diffuser on either side is that it actually comes with real brake lights, as in separate pieces. These are not just painted on. We have the Prancing Horse logo in the middle, right above the 458 Spider license plate, and flanking the license plate are parking sensors. Now, as we move on further up, you can see that we have another Ferrari branding here. Again, just printed on, but on the Elite this would be a 3D photo-etched piece. And then we come to this rear engine bay cover. Now you can see right here that we do get a closed mesh pattern for where the engine vents would be, so you can't see into the engine, but it looks pretty realistic. One thing that I really liked about the predecessor of the 458 Spider, namely the 430 Spider, was that despite being a convertible, it kept a giant transparent engine bay window through which you could see into the engine. For some reason, Ferrari decided to do away with that for their 458 Spider, and instead you get this, which honestly is my least favorite area of the whole car. And this is a tradition that has continued on to the 488 Spider, for which there still is no budget 1/18 scale diecast model as of the making of this video, by the way. I know there used to be a limited stock sealed resin BBR and MR versions for, 400 euros each. Spare change. But they sold out years ago due to extremely low production numbers. And yeah, what a price. Maybe in the future Bburago might release one. Fingers crossed. So, unlike the 458 Coupe, which comes with a big rear window, the only way to see the engine of the 458 Spider is to open this hatch, which you can't on the baseline Hot Wheels model. Actually, that's not entirely true either. I unscrewed the bottom of this car and found out that you can lift this hatch because it has a working hinge mechanism. However, you see these textured air vents here? For this baseline version, Hot Wheels has used a single piece that they've slapped onto the underside of this hatch, preventing it from opening. So if you want to make this hatch open, you'd either have to remove that piece, in which case you'd have a working hatch, but gaping holes here instead of textured grille, or you'd have to carefully cut the mesh piece into two pieces so the hatch can open while you still get to keep the mesh. Of course, even if you manage to get the hatch working, you'll just be greeted to a giant hole, as there is no engine piece on the baseline version. So this is basically what you're missing out on, as this pic of the Hot Wheels Elite version shows, but even on the Elite, you can only see half the engine. The top half remains obscured, and is only fully visible on the hardtop coupe. The engine would have been a naturally aspirated 4.5-liter V8 with 562 horsepower, a top speed of 320 kph, or just under 200 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Now, even on the Hot Wheels Elite version, this section here does not open. While on the real car, this entire area is dedicated to a retractable roof mechanism, including storage area for the roof once it is down. You might think that is asking too much from a model car, but Kyosho and Old School Mini Champs made such models in the form of the second-gen BMW Z4 and pre-facelift R230 Mercedes SL500 respectively. Of course, their prices have, yep, you guessed it, skyrocketed as a result. But if you say, well, what about the sub-$100 range? Even here, Motormax also made the same SL500 as well as an SLK 55 AMG, and a Lexus SC430 with fully retractable roof mechanisms. And I believe there's even Maisto, which made a Mercedes SLK 230 with a retractable roof. So it was very much in the realm of possibility for Hot Wheels Elite to do that for the 458 Spider, but they didn't. Another reason why you don't have to get the Elite version of this. So, let's take a look at the car's interior. And in order to do that, we'll open the only things that are openable on this convertible, which are the doors. And now, if we take a look at this door, you can see that even on this baseline Hot Wheels, the stitch pattern is preserved on the door insert. Not just on top of there, but also down here. And even here a little bit. Of course, what we don't get is the aluminum door handle, but otherwise, we get the basic form of the door sill branding, which, however, does not have the Ferrari logo. Now, as we move on to the interior, this is not the official Hot Wheels 458 interior. Instead, it is one that I painted myself using bright silver paint. Now, of course, it doesn't look as great as if it would have been painted by the company, but I still think that it looks much better than the original, because in this photo you can see that I took before painting how the original dashboard looked like, and it was completely black. There was just a very tiny hint of really dark silver for the paddle shifters and a brighter silver for the floor pedals, but otherwise everything else was unpainted. And I tried to replicate the dark silver finish for the air vents and the dash, but it just didn't work out that well, so I decided to use bright silver instead. So apart from the tone of the color, it now almost looks exactly like the interior of the Hot Wheels Elite 458 Spider. One thing that is missing, though, is the 458 Spider badge on the passenger side of the dashboard, which is a photo-etched piece that the Hot Wheels Elite has on the dash, and it's missing here on the base version. However, the stitching pattern that the Elite has is preserved on this baseline version as well. From all across the dashboard to even the seats, it just adds that extra bit of detail, and the tan interior makes it that much more visible than on the all-black interior of the Elite. Now, this car does have a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic, which is why you will not see a gear shifter down there. And I also painted these buckles for the seat belts, as well as the latches in red. They used to be black. You get raised prancing horses on the headrests, which is another nice detail on this baseline version. Also, I just noticed there's more stitching back there, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, this interior now really looks a lot better, I think, than on the basic Hot Wheels version. The front of the dash also has some nice detailing. And the windshield wipers, they also look great. And now as we check out the driver's side of the 458 Spider, you get the Ferrari logo on the steering wheel, but that's about it. What I did was I added a lot of extra details in the form of this silver trim around the steering wheel. I also painted the red on the Manatino switch to the right, and I painted the red engine start button and the black button on top of it. And behind it we have the paddle shifters, which I highlighted in this bright silver so that they stand out a little more than with the regular paint. Down there we have the floor pedals. Now it's really interesting because if you look closely, you can actually see that there's a separate set of pedals that have been carved into the footwells, and you get these extra pedals in front of them, so that's really weird. We get a floor mat, which however isn't the same color as the floor. And then I also painted these seat controls. Now the shiny stuff that you see here is actually glue residue. So don't touch that because it's actually still wet after all these years, and I don't understand how, but I think Hot Wheels used a very cheap sort of glue to stick these seats into place, and some of that still exists on these models, so I wouldn't touch that. But yeah, I mean, the gauge clusters, they're not that special, but you do get the center gauge in yellow as it is supposed to be on the Ferraris. And of course, the rear view mirror also looks good. So yeah, I mean, it is a very nice interior, I think. And finally, taking a look at the bottom of the car, you can see that we have the 2012 Mattel Ferrari 458 Spider, made in China. Of course, here we have the produced under license. Legal information, as always, on Hot Wheels cars. Pretty flat bottom, a few NACA ducts and the Hot Wheels logo. And of course, here is the rear diffuser, which looks pretty alright. So yeah. Well guys, that does it for this review of the 1/18 scale Ferrari 458 Spider by Hot Wheels. I hope you liked my review, and if you're interested in more Ferrari cars that I have reviewed in 1/18 scale, or perhaps the 1/24 Ferrari 458, please do check out these reviews right over here, and as always, take care, have a wonderful day, and this is Imperial Diecast, signing out.